Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. This is your podcast host, Steve Ramona. And my guest today, I'm excited because this is a humble guy. He's been very successful, but he's really a true servant. And that's what he cares about. He even cares about veterans a lot, which I just learned earlier today, which is so important to me. And I think we support our veterans. We're going to help our world even better. Jim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So, business wisdom is your business, what you live by. So why do you support veterans?
I think veterans and all the people who've served to protect our freedoms allow us to complain about, slow Wi-Fi, you're on mute in a Zoom meeting or something like that. All the little things that just kind of annoy us. I mean, they're really minor compared to what we could have to deal with. And considering the events in the world right now, I think it's really easy to kind of put yourself in a place that says, we're pretty fortunate to be complaining about the things we complain about. And those freedoms are protected by our veterans and the people before them. And so, being a first generation American, my family was very big on understanding the value of freedom. That's part of the reason why we came here, and understanding how important it is to protect it.
I love that. And yeah, we don't know what the next step is and everybody can predict, but we may need our veterans or our military more than ever now with everything that's going on.
Yeah,
and we need to support them. Yeah. And let's pray for them as well. Pray for everybody in Israel that this gets fixed, and Ukraine and Russia as well, that it all gets solved here peacefully sooner than later. And that leads to, this is a servant podcast, how you serve. How does business wisdom serve companies and businesses?
Yeah, I think when you take a look at, let's say, why you might want business wisdom or something like that, it's, there's no one who comes up to you on a daily basis says like, hey, I've got a bunch of extra time. What should I be doing with that? Or, my business is running so well and, there's nothing that's, unpredictable that's happening in the marketplace. So like, we don't really have any problems. I mean, everyone's running around crazy busy, chickens with their heads cut off, can't hire people. And when we do, it's like, oh my gosh, can't hold them accountable. It's all these myriad of problems in every business of every size. And, part of what business wisdom is, what I like to talk about, what I've got in my book is, how can you do only that which matters? Clear away the clutter, the stuff that, seems like it's important, but it's just not. And so I always liken this to, if you went to college or, if you remember in high school, at the beginning of the semester, they give you a syllabus and they say, oh my God, you got to read all these 20 books and you got to do all these things. And, in your first class of the day, on the first day of the semester, you're like, holy cow, I'm not even be able to have enough time for one class. And then by the time you're a junior and senior, you're like, you don't need to buy that book. You don't need to buy that book. You're probably not going to be able to need to do that. So don't you sweat that one. And, the routine and you're a little more calm about everything. And I think in business, it's the same thing. There's some things that are really worth worrying about. And there's some things that aren't. And there's some things that you need to know when to worry about them. And I think that's really one of the more important elements of business wisdom is trying to say like, hey, this is important, just not yet. And I think once you get to that level of calm, just like the junior and senior in college or, the kid on any sports team who's played a little bit longer than others and like they don't freak out when they get the ball passed to them. It's what we're trying to do is help people find that calm in their business so that they can accomplish more and maybe freak out a little less.
Yeah. And Black Swan events, you've heard them, I've heard them. And, they happen all the time. There's a Black Swan event, recession and COVID, which is the newest thing besides the recession. How does business wisdom fall into that? I'm going to put you on the spot, but I know you could answer this. All those businesses that shut down during COVID, could the business wisdom help them?
Well, I think part of it is, there's no like magic pill you can take. Like if you went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, guess what? Like your arteries are 90% clogged and, you're about to have a heart attack and, it's probably in the next 24 hours. They can't be like, hey, here's a pill. Okay. And it's going to fix it all. You've got to be healthy. And, it's not to say that there aren't things we can do when you get really, really sick in your business. But the reality is what you want to do is be as healthy as possible all the time, so that
Mm.
if you do
Mm.
take a punch to the face, if something bad happens like COVID, you're healthy. And so there are things you can do when you're healthy. And so from a personal standpoint, you say, hey, eat well, exercise, you're going to be healthy, right? Well,
Right.
from a business standpoint, one of the big things I did at the very onset of the pandemic, and I went out to all my clients, I said, what's your credit line? Do you have a credit line? How big is it? Ask for more. Okay. Because the worst time to ask for money is when you need it. Okay. And you have to understand banking. And so when you don't need money, if you ask for it, it's kind of easy to get it. And so what I've been telling all my clients for years, even before the pandemic, is like, anytime I hear someone say, hey, business is pretty good, life is good, great, go get a credit line. I don't need a credit line. Get it, because you're going to get it now. And guess what? Use it and flex it. And, if you're getting $100,000 or $250,000, flex it and then get $500,000 or something like that. So that when a bad time hits, you've got more, let's say, fat to be able to weather some hunger. Okay. And that's really just, I'm not saying you can do anything to avoid a black swan event, but what you can do is prepare so that you're more resilient and so that you have a healthier business, because healthier people tend to, when they get sick, tend to recover faster. And that's really what we're after.
I like that analogy because I think of here in California, earthquakes, we have a go bag or a go kit.
Yeah.
You're prepared if the earthquakes happen. You're saying the same thing with your business. Have this kind of set up that when things happen, you're prepared and can come in and right the storm, I guess, right?
Yeah. And, kind of one of the interesting things that's happened over the past number of years, especially with businesses, is, we had like 20 years or more of like super low interest rates. Recessions really weren't that bad. It wasn't like in the 80s or anything like that, where, we just had this zipper, seesaw recession, recovery. I mean, and, even inflationary pressures that we really hadn't seen since the late 70s, early 80s. And so there were a whole generation of managers that became like to the VP and director level who had never seen anything that was like crazy like that. And so for them, total black swan event. But, you go to anyone who's been around business a little longer, they're like, oh, we've seen this before. We know how to deal with inflation and, cost accounting with your pricing and with dealing with your vendors and, contracts you might want to put in place right now. And so, it's one of those things where, part of business wisdom to some degree is, you gotta be really careful when you see a younger generation throwing out terms like, okay, boomer, because guess what? Some of those boomers were the ones that knew how to deal with inflation really well. So, we always got to make sure, when we look at, let's say, even diversity in the workplace, we're looking at a diversity of experience, and that experience spans over time. So sometimes your older workers might have the answers, and you need to be open to them, and you need to make sure that they don't feel marginalized either. And so that's where we want to tap into all the resources we have within our businesses.
What's some great examples or stories of businesses that used wisdom to survive or to grow and scale?
Oh my gosh, there are so many different stories we could tell. And I instead of telling like a particular story, I want to kind of just articulate, we like stories, right? Stories are how we learn. That's what we remember. Okay. That's why, we can probably tell an Aesop's fable, but, I can't tell you much of anything. It's why Netflix is so popular. We like stories. And so, when I was putting together, the kind of ideas behind, business wisdom that, I kind of outline in my book, I wrote 3 fictional stories. Okay. And those fictional stories are about 3 different business people. One is an entrepreneur with a consulting company. Another one is a vice president of sales for a software company. Another one is a general manager for a manufacturing company. And, within those stories are these embedded kind of narratives about like, hey, here are the problems you face in reality in business. And so, I don't want to put a spoiler in there, but, you walk through the pain that these people have. They're like, hey, I've got turnover issues, or I've got, this cost of sales issue where it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be profitable if I don't fix this problem. Or you've got a existential threat to your business issue, where, hey, we might be, let's look at Ford right now, or any of the car companies. They're saying like, hey, we got demands to move to EVs and by like 2030, like, how do we deal with that? And, this current strike that they're dealing with the workers, a lot of it has to deal with how are we going to deal with the employees at the battery plants? And how are we going to deal with this changing manufacturing landscape? And so there's these enormous investments they're making to be prepared for that. At the same time, those investments aren't going to pay off for years. And they have near-term expenses that are increasing. And, it's a catch-22 because everyone's trying to do the right thing by their constituencies. It's just really hard to get the timing right. And so that's a real term kind of, interpretation of what is going on in the business world. So I probably didn't give you the catchy story you wanted, but that hopefully that's good enough.
I think that's a great story, and that leads to the thought in question. Future wisdom is just as important, meaning, like you said in your story, 2030, they've got to be prepared for that. So you've got to use your wisdom for the future as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to look at a strategy. You got to put a strategy in place. And I think the parts of strategy that people probably never account for sufficiently is, I'd say there are three elements that people just don't like to think about because we're impatient. And people prefer action. And so I'd say the three elements that really help you put a good strategy together are sequencing, timing, and patience. And so we might know all the right things that we need to do, just need to do them in the right order. And you need to know when certain things have the most impact, and I think, if you get your timing right, you hit a home run. If you don't, you hit a foul ball. And so timing is really important to take the amount of effort you have at your disposal and maximizing it. And then patience is like that truest form of confidence, which is, being able to say, I know what to do, but I have to be patient to do it at the right time or to do it in the right sequence. And, it's like watching any Mel Gibson movie, where he sits there and says, wait, hold, that patience has got a tremendous amount of confidence that goes with that. And so, I think getting things done in the right order, I always use this analogy of, let's say, an emergency room surgeon, you've got someone who gets in a car wreck and they come into the emergency room and they might have, they might be bleeding. You don't know if there's internal bleeding. You got to make sure they're breathing. They might have a compound fracture. They might even be missing their teeth. And so all these are problems. You can argue that all of them are really important. Compound fracture, I got to treat that. But what do I have to do first? I have to make sure that person can breathe. Then I got to make sure that we stop the bleeding, so that none of everything else doesn't matter. And those could flip flop based on the situation. But, you sit there and you say, I've got to take care of those first. And I still might have, a bone sticking out somewhere, but we'll get to that. And then at the end of the day, I mean, you could argue, hey, having front teeth is kind of important. I mean, like if I didn't have front teeth right now, you probably wouldn't want me on the podcast. You'd be like, maybe I'll get someone else. But the reality is to say it's not important is irrelevant. It's just not important yet. And so what we really want to do is always look at getting things in the right order, making sure when we do something is at the right time, and making sure that we've got the confidence and the patience to make sure we can do things at the right time.
And I believe patience is probably the hardest one for businesses and business owners to adapt.
I mean, most business owners are people of action. They didn't get there by going let me think about this a little longer. So you've got people of action, and even people who are inactive aren't patient. They just impatiently kind of deliberate, and contemplate, what they want to do. So I think it's just a hard thing to do. It's confidence in your plan. It's confidence in yourself. It's confidence in your abilities. And it's just a true test of confidence.
I like that. Everything around it, you make it better. Patience becomes easier. That's so well said. So I think business wisdom, which is why I wanted you on the show, and servant leader, they combine, they collaborate. What do you think the qualities are of a business owner that uses business wisdom and servant leadership in their business?
I think when we're talking about leading people, you can think about yourself at the front of a big auditorium, leading a group of people, but, leadership is a one-on-one thing. Everyone is hearing your message one-on-one, whether you're talking to a group or not. Your most impactful moments are one-on-one. And I think every leader needs to remember that. When I look at servant leadership, I always say, if I'm having an interaction with someone, if I'm communicating with them in some way, shape, or form, what can I do? Because you don't remember what I did for you. Remember how I made you feel, right? What can I do to make sure that when we walk away from this discussion, you feel 1 inch taller? That's my goal. I want you to walk away feeling 1 inch taller. And if you feel 1 inch taller, guess what? Everything else I want to do with you is going to be easier. Okay. You're going to be more, open to, doing something I ask you to do or something I encourage you to do. I may not even need anything from you. You may just, be, a little bit, have some trepidation about like, gosh, I don't know if I should apply for this job, or I don't know if I should do this, or I don't know if I can do this. And so if you help someone feel 1 inch taller, they're going to be able to accomplish something maybe they didn't previously think they could. And, what better way to help someone? What better way to serve someone as an individual, to serve a company, to serve a team, to serve humanity, than to help other people feel more capable than they are before a conversation. And so I'd say, the ultimate goal of servant leadership is you can walk away, and this is an aspirational goal. I mean, you can't do it every time. And, I wish I could, but to aspire to walk away from every conversation, having people feel 1 inch taller, that's not bad.
No, it's good because you inch taller every week, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you're getting better. Growth and scale. That's the whole thing about a business. You want to grow.
Yep.
You don't want to stand still. So when you look at a leader and businesses you work with or people that you see that are leaders, what's the characteristic that they're missing when they're not good leaders?
I think, when you're not a good leader, there's too much ego. It's too much about you. The world revolves around you. And even if you aren't self-centered, you might feel like you have an oversized impact on the world around you. And sometimes, even a well-meaning, very compassionate leader might be like, oh, geez, what did I say to Steve? He came into the office grumpy today. I must have said something wrong. And it's like, stop thinking that everything is because of something you did. Maybe, something bad happened, maybe, Steve, was driving by on his way to work and saw a car accident and upset him, it could be that simple. And so I think you've just got to almost take yourself out of the equation and just kind of see the world for what it is. And I think that's when you can be the best version of yourself and the best leader. It's when you think you're the main character of the play that things tend to go astray. And so I often tell people, I say, just let the spotlight be on someone else and you be in the background behind the camera, as a director, and try and make sure that that person that you're speaking with or interacting with or leading feels like they're the center of attention and you're helping them be better than they were.
And I like that a lot because that's what it's really all about. The good leaders, whether sports or business, are always uplifting their team, their players, or their employees. How does intuition play into business wisdom?
I think intuition is great. And I have been, very blessed in my life to just have good intuition and to just kind of like, and for years in my younger days, people would say like, hey, Jim, how'd you know to do that? And I said, I don't know. I just kind of know. And, it seemed obvious to me, common sense. I don't know what it is. Intuition, your gut feel. And I think there is a lot of research that says your gut instincts are actually pretty accurate. And the speed advantage of a gut instinct is often worth the, let's say, minor amount of inaccuracy that goes hand in hand with, not really thinking something through for hours with a spreadsheet. But I think, when we are satisfied with our instincts, we're really limiting our potential. And what I like to encourage people to do is just say, hey, if you are instinctual and you say like, I kind of know what to do at any given moment, great. you should be more curious about that. And you should spend some extra time saying, why is it that I have this instinct? And what is it that triggers me to do this thing at this particular moment? And like in sales, my personal journey, I ended up being pretty good at sales, and just naturally people were like, wow, Jim, that's really awesome. Why'd you do that? And I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of imagined. And I used to tell people, it's like, this is what I think my mom would have said in this situation. And she seemed to be like someone people liked, and he was always had a good thing to say. But then like no one had this experience of growing up with my mom. So it's like, okay, Jim, why did you say this? And one of my business partners, as I had a lot of success in sales for our organization, said like, hey, can you teach people this? And I was like, oh no, I don't really know. I just kind of know what to do. And he's like, well, then, thank you for selling so much, but you're not done. You got to figure out why you did what you did. Then I kind of went on this journey to kind of develop what I call as conscious competence. Like, I need to know why I do things at certain times. And it's because then I can teach it. And if I can teach it, now I'm a leader, really. I'm not a leader because I had good sales numbers. No, that's just a performer. But I'm a leader when it says I can go out and I can help other people do what I did, because now I've been curious enough not to just enjoy the gift that was given to me, but to be able to help other people enjoy the same gift. And, the gift of growing up with a mother who, really guided me exceptionally well, and my father as well. And so just helping people see and understand why you do things and how to do things is really, a product of taking your intuition and then applying a lot of critical analysis so that you can achieve what I call conscious competence.
Yeah, that's so well said. It's not easy to do. That's why being a business owner is not for everybody. If you're an 8 to 5 out there, it's good. You're making money, supporting your family. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But if you have a dream of doing something, I always believe a coach, advisor like you, or somebody, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, the Tom Brady's, all had coaches. Just is what it is. You can't know everything, especially in business. There's so many facets to it, and you help so many people. Well, we ran out of time. I do want to thank you for being on the show. I've learned a lot. I got notes here like crazy, and listeners, I know you've probably learned something. So I really appreciate your time and the great wisdom you've given us.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on your show. And, I wish you all the best as you spread the good word of servant leadership.
Thank you. And we'll see all of you in the next episode. If you got to, listen to this twice and learn twice. Get your business wisdom.